Hello, welcome to the Plaid Sheep Oracle. This is a collective reading that is about this upcoming movement of Venus. So she will move retrograde, but the Venus retrograde, it has its own thing. The more outer planets, the slower moving planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, have a fairly regular retrograde. They turn retrograde every year. And it's fairly, it moves through the calendar over time, but it's a kind of a regular thing. Whereas the inner planets, Mars, Venus, Mercury, have these retrogrades that each have really their own flavor, kind of their own interesting thing. Mars moves retrograde every 2 years or so. So it's a bigger gap. Mercury, on the other hand, will move retrograde 3 and sometimes even 4 times a year. And his interesting thing is that he does it elementally. So he's currently in a fire element phase. And then he will move into water when he's done with that next year sometime. I don't know exactly when the shift happens. And then he'll have 3 retrogrades that are all water. And Venus, when she shifts retrograde, she does it every 18 months or so-ish. And it is her move from evening star to morning star. So she moves from being visible, in the hours after sunset to being visible in the hours before sunrise. She is also often called, when she's the morning star, she is also called Lucifer, right? The shining one. And there are different qualities to Venus, right? If she's the evening star or the morning star. People often talk about the phase, and she also, she becomes invisible. Planets do when they get really close to the sun, because the sun is so bright. And for her, it's, about 10 days on either side of the Cazimi of the exact conjunction. And often people talk about this as her journey through the underworld. And I don't really see it that way, because it is in the heart of the sun. There's something about that, about illumination. There was also a sense in the more ancient world of the sun being a kind of sovereign energy. So when a planet got close to the sun, there was it's a meeting. We call it a synodic cycle. A synod is a meeting, like a conference kind of meeting, an official meeting. So when she's close to the sun, it's, Venus whispering in the sovereign's ear kind of energy. So there's that floating around. And so I've been asking about this, about this movement. And what comes through for me, and so maybe for you because you're here, is a kind of integration. So the reading today was inspired by this card. This is the Sun card in the Dreamkeeper's tarot. And this feels very much like this Venus in the heart of the sun. Venus speaking to the sun. But not as a sovereign, but as a lover, right? As, a partner, that it's a marriage of sorts. And that this feels like an integration of the mundane and the sacred, the earthly and the spiritual. So when she's in Taurus, she's very earthly. this sort of Venus and Taurus. Venus, that's considered her nighttime home. She has two. She has Taurus and Libra, and Taurus is considered the nighttime home. This kind of queen of the night, the queen, the Venus as the evening star. These qualities of Venus that are very earthy and sensual. And then Venus as the morning star being more associated with Libra. Harmony, beauty in a kind of, beauty is truth and truth beauty way. A more airy quality. And that this time in the sun is a kind of integrative time that happens in both directions, but particularly when she goes from evening to morning, because it is a retrograde. So there is a quality of passing over an area several times, of reviewing, of, examination. This is an inferior conjunction that happens. And then there's a superior conjunction that happens when she catches up to the sun. Right? Because when she retrogrades, they meet the sun passes her, the sun is moving ahead of her through the zodiac. Although she rises first in the morning. And then there will be a superior conjunction when she catches up to the sun in about 9 months. And then she returns to being the evening star. But there's no review that happens. She doesn't cross over the same space several times. Now, the last retrograde was in Leo. She spent a bunch of time in Leo, and this time it will be in both Aries and Pisces. So there's a movement for her as well, as she kind of travels around the zodiac. So we have this, right? This integration. And we start with the Ace of Cups. That which is in the heart. And also at the bottom of the deck, this Two of Swords. How to bring together these two seemingly disparate things. Under the Ace of Cups is the Emperor, kind of the king of the mundane, the ruler of the temporal world. And right below him, the moon. This ethereal, mysterious, psychic energy. In tarot readings, we often, if the King of Swords and the Queen of Swords comes out, we sort of think of that as a couple. But I always think that it's different elements that make for greater power. And an emperor supported by this moon energy, by a high priestess energy, would be a really powerful emperor. The joining of the spiritual and the temporal. And I think there can be I want to call it a crisis almost that has to happen. Then maybe we have to come to some sort of crisis point in our lives where we simply, we cannot go on as we have been. That we find what we're doing is simply not in alignment with who we are, with what we believe, with what we want our life to look like. that we find ourselves at odds with our surroundings in some way, and that it's this crisis point that leads us to a really strong desire for rapprochement, for integration of disparate parts. It may not necessarily feel like, spiritual and temporal. It may be a matter of integrity. We have a job, we work somewhere, and the company is taking steps or doing things in a way that simply is at odds with our own integrity. And it becomes insupportable. We can't stay there. We want to have an existence where what happens in our external life is in alignment with what we believe to be true. And so we have the wheel, which is both unforeseen events, something that comes through as the crisis. It's not, it is showing up as the wheel rather than the tower. The tower didn't come out anywhere here. So it may not, the event that shows up may not be a disruption exactly. It may be a realization of some sort. It may be meeting somebody. It may be reading something, hearing something. It may be an astrological transit that's happening for you that really supports this. It could be that you have, in this particular case, you could have Aries or Pisces placements strongly. There is a cycle too that happens. The last time she moved retrograde in Aries was in 2017. And then I think before that was 2009, and then 2000, right? It's like every 8 years she has an 8-year cycle. Every 8 years she hits the same general space, although there is a movement, right? A precession around the zodiac. She will eventually move where her retrograde is entirely in Pisces rather than Aries. So there may be a series of things that have happened to you, especially if you have strong Aries placements through these years that have led you somewhere. This one feels very significant, I think, because it is a hot Aries moment. She's retrograde. Mercury is moving retrograde in Aries over the same basic space. Neptune and Saturn are both going to be moving into Aries. The North Node was just in Aries and is in Pisces. She's going to meet the North Node a couple of times while this happens in Pisces. So this does feel significant. So it may be a kind of culmination. If you've had a series of things happen since for a while, right? 77, 85, 93, 2001, 2009, 2017, and now. So there is this cyclical thing of the wheel that is happening. And then we have this Queen of Pentacles. And she is here you know, in my setup, sort of looking backwards. I tend to think of, you know, what is here to my left as the past. So there is a look backwards at what has been. She may be seeing how much she's changed, maybe since 2017, or even since the last retrograde in 2023, in the summer of 2023. But there is an assessment of some kind that is going on. And then we have change. And right below that is swiftness. So I think that there is more than swiftness. I feel like it's a sense of urgency. A sense of urgency somehow. That there is something extra significant here now about this integration, about this move from evening star to morning star, that there may be a revelation that occurs either for you, or that you then, as the morning star, as Lucifer, that you bring a revelation to somebody through, you know, in some Venusian way. The moon is at the bottom here. So there's also something about that is linked, I think, with the moon. And she is going to come close, not quite. She's going to come close to the spot where we are having this full moon in Virgo. So the full moon in Virgo is happening at 23 degrees 56 minutes or 58 minutes of Virgo, with the sun at that degree of Pisces. And what's interesting about that is when that she gets close to that, she gets to 24 degrees and something minutes. Mercury will reach 26 degrees. Also, that the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction in Pisces in 2022 happened at 23 degrees 50 odd minutes. I think it's 56 minutes. So there's something about this moon, about this lunar eclipse. Venus is said to be exalted, an honored guest in Pisces. People talk about then her being in her fall in Virgo, but I think that the falls and detriments of planets are our discomfort with stuff. So, you know, our possible discomfort with Venus in Virgo. But there is something. There's something to do with these moons that are happening. There's something to do with Pisces, with the Pisces-Aries mix. And these things may not really become clear for a while. You know, sometimes we look back in history and we see, you know, over the course of 5 or even 10 years, how something unfolded from some particular set of astrological transits. And often it continues to unfold. So then we have the devil. And the beginning of this row is the devil, and the end of this row is 8 of Cups, the renunciation. And interestingly, the cards in the middle are the Empress and the Emperor. And I think that what we are meant to be renouncing is a kind of stuck idea about Venus, about Aries, about Venus in Aries, right? She's said to be in her detriment there. I don't personally think that she is. I think that it's just that we're uncomfortable with the idea of a really passionate, active, courageous, very forthright kind of Venus energy. That we also, that there's difficulties too around Venus and temporal things. The shadows there of avarice, of lust, of gluttony, of, excess self-indulgence, even addictions, kind of with the devil here. That there can be this strong split between what we think of as earthly and what we think of as spiritual, that we think the two shouldn't meet. Also, that with the emperor, that maybe we need to apply force for things to change. That that's the only way. That you can do your meditating and your ritual, but when it really comes down to it, you got to take action and apply physical means in some way. And that can be, right, that can be linked to this Venus and Taurus idea of pushing, right, pushing on the earth, of resistance in that way. So we have then reflections of time, surrender, cycles of change, unearthing, lessons, and right below that is this celestial temple. And what's interesting to me is, right, it's like night and day, kind of, even though there's a moon out here, it's, sort of dark and bright. So that shift happening. Below that actually is Daydream Believer. And then the bottom of the deck is this nostalgic release. So time, right, reflecting on time, reflecting on what has passed, on what you have accomplished, on how far you've come. Perhaps releasing things still, any blocks you have around these Venusian things, around ideas of right, gluttony, of self-indulgence, of taking action that's others might see as selfish. Ways that you still really separate the earthly and the ethereal. Hold the light. Ancient memories, sensitive gifts, I remember. And then in the middle, the mystic key. Patterns in the subtle realms, time keys, singularities. And I would say that this Venus, who, she becomes a morning star while she's still in Aries, I think, but it's like right at the first couple of degrees of Aries. March 22nd, she meets the sun, and I think the sun enters Aries on March 20th. So just kind of 2 degrees into Aries. But then she, almost immediately enters Pisces. So there is this strong mystic quality that is going to infuse this retrograde. That she's going to meet the North Node in Pisces. Later, she will meet Saturn in Pisces. They will both oppose together the South Node in Virgo. So the mystic as someone who sees God as immanent, as in everything. One who doesn't make a strong separation between the physical and the spiritual. Who sees the two as one. Who has integrated these things. And then we have tune your frequency. Boundaries, magnetism, energy clearing. And this and the next row feel like advice or suggestions that if you would like to, if you really want to dive into this energy, maybe you have strong Aries or Pisces placements, maybe you have a strong Venus in your chart, as I do. She is my sole dispositor. Everything leads back to her in my chart. Then maybe you want to see this space of Venus as a kind of sacred period. Now the whole retrograde is sort of longish. It starts tomorrow, March 1st. And she turns direct on April 12th. So that's kind of a biggish period, a whole month and a half. But you could choose to do it during the period that she disappears. So from around March 12th, she goes under the beams. That's less than 18 degrees away from the sun. It's about when she disappears, when she gets too close to be seen in the night sky, to around April 2nd-ish. So it's about 20 days that she will really be invisible. I mean, you may not be able to see her, right, depending on what's around you, if you've got hills or buildings or lots of light pollution, but in a, kind of in a technical way. So you could choose that period. It's about 20 days. Or you could even kind of choose the Kazimi period around March 22nd, say the 21st, 22nd, 23rd. Whatever appeals to you, works for you. To kind of dive into this space. To tune your frequency, to consider these things. Maybe how you've changed, how your ideas about the sacred and the mundane, or the sacred and profane, are integrated, are mixed. How you want to move through the world. Are you in integrity with those things around you? And so then we have this High Priestess. And she's looking at the card at the back of the deck, which is the Four of Pentacles. And this particular Four of Pentacles that has these scales of balance, this idea of making things, of integrating things, of making them equal, right? We have this tree that represents physicality, and then this mask and book that are kind of a mental space. So that integration energy, and below the Priestess is this beautiful healing kind of Piscean energy. Then there's the Kaleidoscope. And this feels like this disappearance of Venus, because then we have Catching the Light. So she vanishes. She disappears into the light. And on the other side, we have the Hierophant. And this particular Hierophant, and the Hierophant is about the connection between the above and the below. The Hierophant, it provides that connection. The Hierophant is the vicar. The Hierophant is the voice, that which brings God into reality, into society. This, I think, is absolutely not the only interpretation of this Venus movement. There may be others for different people. This is what comes through for me. And so it may have meaning for you if you're here. And I would invite you to explore it, whether you create a kind of sacred container around this space or no. It may be just that you contemplate these things, that you keep your eyes open for opportunities to combine these ideas, opportunities to combine all sorts of kind of ethereal, more non-physical with physical ideas, with, matching up your integrity, your belief system with what exists around you, with the kind of things that you interact with. Stores where you shop, people that you spend a lot of time with, ways that you behave online, places that you go online, what you consume, what you allow into your sphere. A contemplation of where you are, how you feel about your life. Are you, embracing those things that you love? It might be a reconsideration of your wardrobe, of, what you have in your house, of the kind of food that you eat. There's all sorts of ways that you can embrace this invitation. And I hope that you'll come and tell me about it in the comments. I'm curious about other people's journey through this. And I think that we're going to talk more about this as we go. I think there may be another reading that may want to come through at around the time of the Kazimi, and then maybe something that comes through after she's visible again as the morning star. And then perhaps, once she's completed her retrograde and has left the shadow space, which happens sometime in early May somewhere. She doesn't enter Taurus until the 6th of June. So she moves fairly slowly even after she turns direct. Because it takes her from April 12th all the way to June 6th, almost 2 months, to move 36 degrees. And normally she would move through that in about 30 days. So she's going to spend quite a bit of time in Aries. So we will talk about this again. And this is an invitation for you. I wish you the very best, and I wish you a really interesting journey with Venus. And I'll see you next time. So long.